Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got for you the POLYGEL tips and tricks Q&A. I've compiled some questions and the subjects I'll be covering are listed on screen for you in case you are interested in a particular question. Before we get into it, I do want to remind you to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you never miss out on my videos. I do still have my huge giveaway happening and I will have that linked in the iCards. I will also have a part 2 to this Q&A and a whole beginners series that is starting with this video. So make sure you ring that bell so that you'll know when those are loaded. So basically first I'm just going to show you guys all of the supplies that you need when you're doing polygel nails. You need a cuticle pusher of some sort. I showed you two, a regular kind of standard one and then one that comes on another end of a pinching tool. And then you need a nail file. I generally use these double-sided ones, or like they're really easy to find. You can get them in most polygel kits, online. But I particularly like the Tammy Taylor peel and stick files. You will also need, well, you don't really need a buffer, but I like to have a buffer just to make sure my nails are somewhat smoothed out before I go in with my polish or top coat. Then you need some kind of brush. I showed you just a regular brush and an actual double-sided polygel brush. And then you need one of these three: nail forms, nail tips, or dual forms. These are the dual forms I will be using today. I'll actually be using all three: the tips, the dual forms, and the paper forms, just so I can show you one of each. These dual forms I like because they're more straight than some of the others. You'll also need alcohol or slip solution, and of course polygel. So I will have all of these swatched for you guys. I did actually record swatching these out, but I guess my camera wasn't on. I'm so sorry. Also, you'll need a prep and dehydrator, which you can make yourself, and you'll need some kind of primer. I'll have a couple linked down below, along with everything else I'll be using in the video. If you use nail tips, you'll be needing nail glue. You'll need some kind of brush to remove any dust off the nails, and a base and top coat. Generally, I use a base and top coat that matches the polygel I'm using, but Model 1's base and top is my kind of overall favorite for a beginner priced base and top coat. So I'm just showing you the different polygels I have swatched out here for you. And I'm just kind of holding up the bottle next to the color that I swatched. This was swatched out on the back of a nail form paper. So when I use my nail forms, I save those pieces of paper for later. So my first question was about the best affordable polygels. I like Beetles and Yoyogi. Both are very inexpensive. Both are great. I had another question about how do you know if a dual form will fit different clients or different people? Well, you don't, but you can customize them. So the first thing is getting the sizing correct. You'll want to make sure that the dual form reaches from sidewall to sidewall without being pressed flat against the nail. If it presses flat against the nail, go the next size up because you need some space for the polygel to go. Then you check it against the cuticle area, and if it's not, kind of fitting the proper shape as your cuticle, you can use a 180 grit file and lightly kind of file those edges just to shape it to however your cuticles are shaped. So now I'm going to take my base coat and just coat all of the nails. When I do this, you'll see my brush is kind of wiggling, and that is on purpose. It's not me shaking. I am working it into the nail plate. You do want to just kind of wiggle and scrub the brush back and forth, side to side. Just give it little jiggles, and it'll help work it into the nail plate, and it'll provide great adhesion. Now, if I was doing this on a real person, I would have used my prep dehydrator and my primer before doing this, but because this is my practice hand, it's not necessary to waste those products on it. So I will have a video linked in the iCards about proper prep techniques. That will also show the dehydrator and primer step. So my next question is, how much polygel do you need to put in a dual form? How thick does it need to be? So I'm going to squeeze this out onto my little spatula end of my polygel brush. And you can see it's kind of a nice little dollop, but it's not huge. And then I'm going to set my spatula into the dual form just a little bit further back than the cuticle. We're not going to start it right on the edge. I'm going to set the spatula into the dip part of the dual form and just gently glide the spatula back. That will create a very easy shape for you, and then you have less work to do with your brush. It really saves you time. So my next question is it sticky? Yes, polygel is very sticky, and it does vary by brand. The softer polygels are generally a little bit more sticky than the more firm ones. But really, all you need to do is make sure you are keeping your brush wet. However, you do not want your brush to be super flooded wet. If you notice, every time I go off screen, that's when I'm dipping into my alcohol. And then I tap it against my little paper towel that I have sitting here. And that's because if you flood this nail or this dual form with the alcohol, it starts to kind of break down the polygel, and so your nails won't cure properly. They'll break, they'll lift, you'll get all sorts of problems. So just try not to use too much alcohol, but if you are needing to use a bit more, just make sure that you let that evaporate before you press it on your nail. It's very important that it's all evaporated and that it's just the polygel when you press it down. So basically, I'm just using very super feather light strokes to smooth this out. If you press it all, like I am here, you can see how I'm kind of moving the polygel instead of just kind of smoothing it. And all I really wanted to do was smooth it. So now I'm going to take my dual form and I'm going to press it starting at the cuticle area. And you don't want to press it down super firm, but you do want to give it a good little press. It's kind of a hard medium to find, but you'll find it. Just make sure there's no air pockets in it. As far as the best lamp or temperature to cure at, the sun UV lamps that I use, I found on Amazon. There's not really a temperature, but I will link some lamps in the description box for you guys. So now, as I'm removing my dual forms, I'm pinching the front of it and wiggling side to side. And you'll notice as I wiggle side to side that the dual form almost starts changing color, and what that is that it's got air in there now. It's releasing from the product. So now I've only got this very thin strip of product that's actually attached to the dual form. So I'm just going to continue to pinch and wiggle until it pops off. It is giving me a bit more of an issue than normal. That's because it's not my hand, and these nails on my practice hand are a little bit, they're not stuck down well. So my next question is going to be, how do you put it in a dual form without needing to build on it later? And the answer is, you can't. When using the dual form, it needs to be applied very thin. You can see here that it is super thin. And the thing is, this nail will break in 2 seconds if I put any kind of pressure on it. So it's very important to use a second layer to build up the apex and give it some more strength. Now, I would normally just apply this second layer straight to the nail and smooth it out. But for a beginner, the easiest thing can be to use a dual form again for your second layer. So I'll show you exactly how I'm going to do that. I'm going to start even further away from the cuticle this time than I did before. I'm just going to set the spatula kind of down into that dent, and I'm going to drag it along just like I did previously. And now I'm going to smooth it out. So I've got it turned around right now so that the free edge is away from me and the cuticle is facing toward me. And I'm just going to smooth this down and bring it further back towards the cuticle. And when I get a little bit closer to the cuticle, I'm going to feather it down to almost nothing. You're basically going to be able to see through it in the cuticle area. That's because we don't want to add additional thickness to the cuticle, but we do need to give strength to the rest of the nail, and we need to give it a good transition up into that apex. So I'll just continue pressing and working until I've got it smoothed out and shaped the way that I need it to be. Then I'll go ahead and press it to the nail again. Much like with the cuticle area, you want your sidewalls to be very thin. That's why it is a great technique to put that spatula down into the dual form and drag it along, because then you'll get those nice thin sidewalls. So here you can see the cuticle area is basically see-through right here. There is so little applied to that. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tuck it back into that cuticle area a little bit further forward this time than I would have the first time, and I'm going to start to press it down. Now when you use the second layer, there is going to be a gap at the free edge, meaning if you want a nail this long, you can't use a dual form as your second layer. You're going to need to build the second layer straight on the nail. But if you want your nail to be a little shorter, you can use this dual form method of building up your second layer. So now that I've squeezed that onto the nail, I'm going to use my brush and just smooth out any polygel that squeezed out the edges. At the cuticle area, I'm not just smoothing it, I'm removing it. And then on the side walls, I'm actually going to leave that excess there. I'm just going to smooth it down so that there's no gap between the second layer and the first. If I just removed that, you would see a gap and kind of a line where the new layer was. And I used a different color of polygel on the second layer so that you could see very clearly where I was applying the new product, and you could see the difference in the old and the new. So on this side, even more squeezed out. So I'm just going to smooth it down onto that side of the nail. I'm also going to kind of smooth underneath the nail on that side, just to make sure that I don't have any overhang and that edge is nice. We are going to file these sidewalls later, so if you get any overhang, you can clean it up with a file. But I just wanted to make sure and take care of that now. The more we can take care of now, the less work we have in the long run. So again, it's been cured for a full minute. I'm going to pinch and wiggle until the dual form pops off. And like I said, it is harder to get the dual forms off of this practice hand because these nails are not secured down onto it. These polygel nails are being built onto a nail tip that is not glued down to the practiced hand, so it kind of rocks side to side and it makes it a lot harder to get off. But when you do it, it'll be easy. So you can kind of see what I mean by the free edge. There's a little gap there between the two layers. That's okay, because we're going to shorten these nails up later. And now I'm just going to take some alcohol on a lint-free nail wipe, and I'm going to remove the sticky part underneath. So next nail, I am working on a tip that I already glued down. Again, I apologize that my camera wasn't recording. That was at the very beginning that I glued that down. And I'm gonna show you how to build an apex. With this nail, I squeeze the polygel directly onto the nail, and then as I drag down towards the tip, I squeeze with less pressure so that it has a kind of perfect fade. And I wanted to show you the tip of my brush behind that big lump of polygel so you can see kind of more precise way of knowing exactly how much I squeezed out, how big that lump is. So I'm going to keep my brush wet, and I'm going to start working from the free edge, and I'm pressing the polygel into the shape of the tip. I like to work on the free edge first because I noticed kind of early on that if I worked at the cuticle first, as I pulled down the nail, it would kind of pull away from the cuticle, and then I'd have to touch up the cuticle later anyways. But I noticed if I was to work backwards and work from the free edge back, I don't have to touch anything up later. So that's what I choose to do. I did forget to answer one of my questions, so I'll do that now. One of the questions was, how do you keep the dual forms from sliding around on the nail? When you press it into your nail, it can tend to slide around if you leave your base coat after curing it. But if you go ahead and wipe off the sticky layer of the base coat before you apply your polygel or your dual forms, it will not slide around. If I had left that base coat and not wiped it away, this nail right here would be giving me so much problem. It would be sliding as I pressed, but because I cleansed it, it's got a good amount of grip, and I don't have to worry about my polygel sliding around on me.
Baby, baby, you driving me wild, you driving me so crazy. Got me acting out, got me trying to stay sober. Wanted your love and I'm out here hungover.
So I'm just going to continue patting and pressing and smoothing out the nail as I go, keeping in mind that I want to keep my sidewalls thinner, my free edge a little bit thinner, and my cuticle completely flush to the natural nail. So you're going to leave the majority of your product right down the middle of the nail. Yes, it is kind of a technique that comes with time. It won't be as easy to do in the beginning, but keep practicing and stick with it. I have a video, a really old video from last year showing, I think, maybe my first or second time that I had worked with polygel, and I was not anywhere near as good. It really has come with practice. So I really encourage you guys to not get frustrated with yourselves. If you want to see some pictures of my first set, I'd be happy to show them. I'd be happy to send them to you. They're on my Instagram. So we all get there, and it just takes practice, guys. So as I turn the nail from side to side, you can see I've left the majority of product right here, and then it thins out as it gets towards the free edge. I am going to smooth it a little bit further because I notice when I'm looking from the top that it kind of curves right here, almost like a backwards C. And I don't want that, so I'm going to kind of press that product up towards the more top of the nail rather than allowing it to curve on this side. Once I have everything smoothed out the way that I like it, I will go ahead and cure it for 60 seconds and continue on to the next nail.
I was kissing you with my eyes open, but you said keep them closed and be in the moment. So I did my best to make you feel wanted. But what about what I want? What about what I want? And what I wanted was to crash with my dumb friends on the weekend instead of watching a movie. But you wanted me to be what you need instead of being me. Oh, and that's how I knew it. I guess I never loved you like I loved.
And again, just going to remove the sticky layer I just wanted to leave this in because watch, you'll see what I mean, that these nails are not attached. See, fell right in my hand. So now I'm going to show you guys how to work with dual forms. Because I am working on a practice hand and not a real hand, I am taking this tab and flipping it upside down to allow it to have some stick to the fake nail. But if this was a real person, I would put it completely on that underside of the nail form. So then I pinch the free edge of the form and I tuck it just behind that free edge of the finger. I will do a video on the nail forms for you guys too. I'll do a video for you guys on my hand rather than a practice hand. But I still wanted to show you how I build a nail on the practice hand, even with the forms. So I'm going to build a square nail this time. And it's basically the same as the coffin, except instead of working on a tip where I want to keep everything aligned with those sides, I'm creating the sides. So I choose where my free edge stops. I choose how far down my sidewalls come. All of that is up to me. I try to keep the lines as clean as possible, just to make it easier in the filing process. But it's definitely not crucial because it all can be cleaned up in the filing process. So if your lines are not super straight, that's okay. We have files for a reason. I'll leave a link actually above for you guys to see. I did a set recently. It was a blue and brownish red polygel set, and they were super chunky looking before I filed. After I filed, they were sleek and sexy, and I loved them, and all of you guys seem to love them too. But it's not always going to be this clean, guys. I just want you to know that.
It's okay with me. Okay with me.
So again, just going to be smoothing out the sides, the edges, making sure the bulk of my product is down the middle of the nail. And this one I'm not going to build up the apex as much as the coffin nail. I want you to see what it would look like if I built enough strength into the nail, but didn't give it a more defined apex like I do on the coffin nail. So you'll see that here coming up. But for now, we'll just continue working the product until it is the way I like it. Then I'll cure it, and we will continue on. Okay, so now to remove the nail form, you're going to pinch underneath the nail. It's kind of hard to do with my little bit longer nails, but you just kind of pinch and then you push down and you can bring it away. Don't push up into the nail, you will break it or you will hurt yourself. So just make sure you push it down and then pull it out. And it's just giving you that side view to see that I do have enough strength built into this nail, but it's more of a straight apex where this one is more curved. And this one is the way that I wear my nails. Well, it will be when it's filed. I'll show you again when it's been filed. So for this one, we are going to do a very short nail. I had a question about what to do with short bitten nails to help keep them on. And two suggestions I have. One is that it is all about the prep with polygel. If you do not prep your sets properly, that's a tongue twister, prep your sets properly. Say that 10 times fast. If you don't prep properly, that was even worse. Oh my gosh, oh. Anyways, if it's not done properly, your nails have no way of adhering to your natural nail. your polygel has no way of gripping onto that. So you have to have that proper prep to make that happen. So I had an air bubble. I'm hoping you guys can see it. I've circled it here. It's a little bit whiter in that area. And I'm going to take my spatula and kind of poke into it until it pops. It's very important to get that out now. It will change the integrity and lessen the strength of the nail. Or you could possibly, when you're in your finish filing process, you could file away that top layer and then you've got a big dent in the top of the nail. So it's just very important to make sure you've got no bubbles in your polygel. But it does happen, and if it does and you do file and a dent happens, just go ahead and apply some more polygel in there in that little missing pocket and it'll fill it up and you can smooth right over it with your file. But because this is going to be such a short nail, I'm keeping it very thin and not really giving much of an apex. I'm also doing a technique where you kind of sculpt the nail on air. Polygel really holds its shape, particularly this kind. This is by Burano. And so when you're working with it on such short nails, you can create a free edge without using tips or forms. I will also link a video above of one of the channels I watch. She does great work with her polygel, and I learned this technique of sculpting on air from her. She can also assist with polygel on short bitten nails. She has videos on live clients working on short bitten nails, and I know it's a lot better to see it be done on a live person, but I have nails already on, and I am a nail biter, but not so much anymore because I always keep my nails done just to keep myself from biting them. So hopefully as you practice and get better with your polygel and the adhesion is there, your sets stay on, hopefully you can keep your sets on and you won't feel the need to bite them either. I still put them in between my teeth, I just don't bite down on them now. Because I don't want to ruin my teeth, or even worse, I don't want to ruin my nails. Just kidding. Kinda. I don't know, guys. I'm feeling sassy today. So, again, I'm just patting and pressing and smoothing until I get it shaped how I like. Then I'll cure it, and we will get into some filing.
Ran into you at the drugstore, you were picking up your prescription. It's funny cause I got addicted to you when we were in love, and even though you broke it off, I struggle.
Okay, so in my filing, this first one here is, like I said, a square, so I'm just going to clean up my sidewalls, make them super straight, and then straighten up my free edge a little bit.
Move on because I know what's bad for me. Cause seeing you means calling you, means all over roof again, falling for you, means sleepless nights, me in my mind, means craving the hit.
Then moving into my nail with the dual forms. Again, I am straightening out those sidewalls. And these sidewalls I will take in a little bit later to make it more of a tapered square. But for now, I'm just really focusing on taking down the length of the free edge so that I no longer am missing product between the two layers. Because once I get to a certain point, those layers meet up together and have a good adhesion with each other.
Getting my feelings too fast, then I'm hurting when you don't write me back. I wish I could give in to my dependency, but I move on because I know it's bad for me. Cause seeing you means calling you, means all over roof again, falling for you, means sleepless nights, me in my mind, means craving the hit of you all the time. I can't even have a taste, I can't open up that game.
So I'm just continuing through shaping each sidewall and the free edge, and I go through and do that on all of my nails. Then I come back and start going into the filing with my e-file.
I used to spiral when I couldn't get enough. So I moved on because I had to sober up.
Now for this itty bitty nail, I'm again coming down the sidewalls, and then I will work on the free edge. But because it's almond, what we're gonna do is first I'm going kind of underneath both sides and just bringing that up just a little bit. Then I'm going to turn the nail to one side, and I'm angling from the sidewall to the tip and filing that until it's got the shape that I need it to have. It's hard for me to put into words, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just basically meeting my sidewall up with my free edge. Once the nail hits the sidewall and the free edge, then I stop filing. Now I'm just going to continue to smooth out those sidewalls a bit and blend them in with the rest of the nail. I did order some glue tabs so that hopefully next time I use my practice hand, these nails won't continue to wiggle around on me constantly, because I did find that if I use nail glue on this, it holds them down. But I don't want to keep taking them off because it'll rip the silicone. But if I have it one held down and then I put on new nails with glue tabs, hopefully, we'll see, that should do the trick, but we'll see. So I'm just smoothing out along the cuticle. And just perfecting my shape. Now I'm going to use my e-file, which of course the bit and the file both will be linked in the description. I do link every product that I use or show, guys, so it's all down there if you're curious. This is a cone-shaped ceramic drill bit, and it's like a medium coarse. And I'm just starting around the cuticle, and then I go down my sidewalls, then I smooth out the rest of the nail and debulk anywhere that it needs to be. I did build up this nail too much, and I did that because it's a mistake that I sometimes make myself, of course, but it was a mistake I made more often when I was a beginner. I was so afraid that my nails were going to break, so I made them super, super thick. And then I would realize, oh my gosh, I have way too much on here. So I decided to show you what to do in case that happens. And you'll see in the finished nail that it did come into a nice shape in the end. So just make sure if you're a beginner and you're starting out, use this bit with a slow speed. I'd say probably no faster than 10 or 12,000 RPMs. And even that is like a high end for you. And just take it slow. Go bit by bit, little by little. You'll get there. And the more you work with an e-file, the more comfortable you'll get with it. I do have a beginner's e-file that is specifically made for beginners. I just ordered it, so it should be coming in a few days, and I will have a review and demo of that. Hopefully it'll be a good one, and I'll be able to add it to my beginner series for you guys. But I'm just continuing to shape the nails the same on each, so going around the cuticle first, then following through down the rest of the nail.
me in the car. I'm late for work. Spill on my shirt. Shut up. All day in the life. Call you in the break. I cry out loud. You say you're proud of me. I don't know how you do it. You are my final puzzle piece. You're the shade that's all.
Okay, now that I've got those shaped up nicely with my e-file, I'm just dusting them off, and I'm going to use my hand file and sharpen up the sidewalls and free edge. This is a 100 grit file.
Outside the box.
And I turn it to the side and bring up that bottom free edge as well, just to make sure it's super straight. I had not done that earlier. That's because I like doing it after I e-file, because sometimes if I bring up those bottom sidewalls and then I e-file, I can sometimes nick them with the e-file, and then I have to file it up more and it comes up higher than I meant it to. It's really frustrating for me, but I found that if I file that lower sidewall after, I don't have to worry about that. So that's what I choose to do now. But once I go through and neaten up those sidewalls, the lower sidewalls, and the free edge on each of the nails, I'll switch to 180 grit file so that I can smooth over the top of the nail and just perfect its shape. I'll also use that 180 grit file, it's what I'm using now, to go around the cuticle area and make sure that that is just blended really well into the natural nail bed. Then once I get done with the 180 grit file, I'll use a 100 grit buffer. I don't use a 180 grit buffer because I find that it smooths out the nail too much for the gel polish or gel top coat to adhere nicely. But if I use a 80 grit or 100 grit buffer, it smooths out the nail beautifully, makes it really nice to work on to make sure that my polish is flowing smoothly, any nail art applies smoothly and easily. It really just helps bring it all together in the end for me, so that's what I choose to do. So like I said, I'm just going to go through and use my 180 grit file just to smooth over the nail. First, I kind of blend down the sidewalls and make sure I've got a nice line coming from the top of the nail down to the sidewall, and it's a nice kind of curve. Then I go up and down in a vertical motion the way I was just doing a moment ago, and I bring the apex to match the tip of the nail. So it's kind of in like a slanted vertical motion. I'll show you again here in just a moment. Okay, so sidewalls. Now I'm just going around that cuticle area. I'm going to do this on all of the nails. This is my routine. Sidewalls, cuticle. Back down to the other sidewall. Then I'm going to bring the top of the nail and angle it smoothly in a kind of smooth arch down to the sidewall. Now I'll go and angle the file vertical so that it's coming from the apex down to the tip of the nail. Then I smooth out that free edge.
Singing our favorite songs, crying for no reason. But now you came to me, I will be economist, and I'm missing this. And you're turning my faith.
Now that I'm done, I'm just going to dust those off one more time, and I'm going to show you each of these nails. I'm going to show you here separately, and then I'll try to show them to you together in a moment. Basically though, my square nail, I filed it down a little more than I normally would, well, quite a bit more than I normally would, to show you the difference in thickness. This first square nail here, it is too thin. It would easily break if I tried to wear it this way. This one has a good apex, the middle one, but the free edge is very thick, which I'll show you in just a moment. And then the coffin nail is the way that I tend to wear my nails. It has more of a high apex, and then it comes down into a nice thin free edge. Although this still is a little bit thicker than what I would normally wear them. So hopefully you can see this square nail here is super thin. And now you can really see it when I show you the free edge. Very thin, it would break. This one's too thick. This one's in between and almost the correct thickness. Just a little bit too thick for me. And then that little pinky nail basically had no apex at all because it was just a very small enhancement. So hopefully holding these nails together here for you, you can see the differences. Let me know if you have any questions about those, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So I just sprayed them with alcohol and cleansed them off, and now I'm going to go in with my top coat and cure it. We'll be all done. While I'm adding my top coat, I will answer my last question, which is, can you be my new apprentice? I don't know, can you? Maybe? I don't know. I don't think you live here, but if you did, I might let you. That's it, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Of course, if you have any questions, suggestions, or requests for different sets, let me know down below. I love to hear from you. Be sure to hit like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys all next time. Bye!